When it comes to making sorrel, it is actually very, very simple. And that is why it's one of my favorite drinks to make, especially when I don't feel like juicing to make sweet juice. I can just make some sorrel. So, one of the first ways is to use a pot with water and boil it, right? So right now that pot with water you saw is on the stove and it's essentially boiling. It's heating up, and then what I do from there is divide up my sorrel. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's two types of ways that I go about making sorrel. So each cup of sorrel is dedicated to each way. As you can see, we also then have, sugar. So overall, the three main ingredients that you need is water, sorrel, or the hibiscus plant, and brown sugar. And ginger is essentially an additional ingredient to add to it, primarily because my father likes to add ginger to his, but this is the simplest way to make sorrel. Now, while the first method that I shared is with the pot boiling under water, the second method is to essentially put sorrel in a jar with boiling water and have it soak, preferably overnight for like 24 hours. However, for content making purposes, I'm not going to be doing that here. But in general, to really get the sorrel to seep in, to soak, to be extracted, it would be best to do this 24 hours in advance, specifically concerning this method. Now, when it comes to the hot and water method, it's a bit faster, so you may not need to have the sorrel soak because the pot is going to be hot and keeping the water hot, which will help to extract the sorrel faster. As you can see, the water will change instantly as soon as you begin to stir it. And you're just going to keep stirring till all of the leaves are essentially soaked, soft, and moist. And then from there, you're going to leave it on the pot or on the stove to soak with the fire off, because you already warmed up the fire. This is one of the most important parts because sorrel is very strong, and a lot of times, just because the water has changed color doesn't mean that the sorrel is really soaked into the water to give it the taste of the plant. Now, if you want to add ginger, this is the basics. There's other type of spices that you can add, but this video is specifically focused on the basics. Just adding ginger into whether it's the jar that's going to soak overnight and let the ginger and the sorrel soak together in the jar. That's that's all you really got to do. And then later on, as you're going to see, you can just also put ginger in the pot and have it, soak with the sorrel in the pot. So adding ginger is just something extra. Now, it's been about 30 minutes, 40 minutes since I left this on the pot. And as you can see, the water is rich, right? It's hot. You don't really see the plants because they kind of settle to the bottom of the pot. And now for me personally, I like to just throw the sugar in there while everything is warm so that the sugar can essentially dissolve. There's a lot of people who they'll strain the sorrel first and then put the sugar in. But for me, being that, hot water is dissolving everything, I just throw the sugar right there with the sorrel. And what I do is taste the liquid to see if the sugar is actually tasting. So one of the biggest things is that sorrel by itself is very bitter. So when you're adding the sugar, you'll know when the sugar is essentially taking its effect, because it will be balancing out the bitter taste of the sorrel. And once you find that amount of sugar you need to essentially not have it so bitter, but like a bittersweet taste, then from there you can strain it off and put it into a jar, a container, whatever you have. Now, for me, I have like these 1 to 2 gallon holders at home, but they also can't fit in the fridge. So I'm just using this right now to take the bulk of the liquid and essentially strain it off into this, specifically because there's going to be more water to be added. So as you see, the pot I have is not big, which means I had to, use a decent amount of water, but not enough water to where I can dilute the strength of the sorrel to dilute the strength of the sugar, right? You don't want it to be really, really rich, because as you can see, the sorrel plant alone is super rich. So I put it in here so that I can gauge, how much I've made. And then after cleaning up and stuff, because sorrel is very red, you want to make sure you don't make any messes. But after cleaning up, what I will then do is add more water, cool water, cool off the water that just came out of the pot, and then start to taste it. Be okay. Is it okay with this amount of water diluted? And then from there, I kind of like, sorrel prep, juice prep, where I'm gonna put these in smaller container, or put the sorrel in smaller container to then put in the fridge. This first batch here and this first method is very sweet. I preferably like just sorrel and the brown sugar. I don't really like, the ginger, but just with how strong sorrel is, after I made sweet batch, I can still continue to use the other half that I had soaked in the jar with some of the leftover from the first. On top of that, I can go back and re-soak the leftover in the pot again with the ginger that I didn't soak before, along with the ginger and sorrel that was soaked before, to really extract. As I shared, that's why it's some people leave this stuff for like 24 hours soaked, because look at that. Even after I've made that much sorrel, it's still that strong. See that? And now I leave this for another, hour to, about an hour with the ginger, because it takes a while for the ginger to really settle in. And then from there, the same thing, strain it off. Right? Strain it off. As you can see, add some more water to dilute it. Taste it. If I can taste the strength of the ginger. This batch here does not have the sweet strength, because this is for my dad. So I didn't put any more brown sugar. I just left, what was left from the first batch. And there you have it. Just like that, now you have this much sorrel. And by the way, the pack of sorrel was about 4 ounces of sorrel was able to make this much. In fact, after I made this, my dad saw what was left over, and right now we're still soaking it to make more sorrel.